Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to be popping in and out of this lesson today, so you'll hear my voice randomly. Don't be too surprised. But Mrs. Foley is going to be in charge, and I will fill you in on some specifics as we go through.
Hi, fifth graders. Welcome back to Wit and Wisdom in Sync. I'm Miss Foley, and this is Module 1, Cultures in Conflict. Let's get started. For this lesson, you'll need a few materials. You'll need your copy of Thunder Rolling in the Mountains, handout 18B, your Wit and Wisdom in Sync journal, and a pen or pencil or something to write with.
And you'll also need handout 19A that can be found on Schoology. It's also in your workbook, so you can have that out as well.
If you need to pause the video, please do so now to retrieve your materials. In this lesson, we're going to take a closer look at the events in chapters 4 and 5 of Thunder Rolling in the Mountains. There is so much happening just in those two chapters. If you haven't read chapters 4 and 5 yet, pause the video now so that you can do that before you go further, because you are going to want to know what is happening. Then, resume the video when you're ready. Today's reveal is, what does a deeper exploration of characters reveal in the novel? You know, there are many different aspects of a story that we can examine to dig deeper and figure out more about the characters. Well, in this lesson, you're going to explore an important conflict that's among the Nez Perce to understand just how complex of a problem it is that the tribe faces. We'll see what it reveals about the different characters. First, let's briefly review chapters 4 and 5, because it's really important that we have a solid shared understanding of the events before we delve deeper into the conflict. And a lot happens in these two chapters, as I have said a couple times. Please take out handout 19A, which is a story map for Thunder Rolling in the Mountains. If you need to pause the video now to retrieve it, please do so. A story map can help you organize the key elements of a story and summarize the events. One reason it's called a map is because it helps you get from one event to another, kind of like a road map.
Okay, so what I'd like for you to do is we're going to kind of do a little comprehension check here to see how you're understanding this story so far, just chapters 4 and 5. So what I want for you to do is I want you to head on over to Schoology, and you will see an assignment that says Day 4 GMT Handout 19A. And if you'll notice, this is the exact version that Mrs. Foley just showed you. The only difference is there's these little boxes here. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down here, and here are your options. All you're doing is matching. Okay, so main characters. The main characters in this chapter include, and then you would decide which one has the main characters, and I'm just going to say this, and you will drag and drop in whichever one you want this to be in. Okay, if you want to throw it back down here, you just do that. When you're finished, you go down and click Review, and then you click Finish. So when you are done with that, you can come back here to continue the lesson with Mrs. Foley. So go ahead and pause the video now and do that. Okay, so if you are done with your handout 19A assessment, you can go ahead and move on now. Here we go.
I'll show you how I filled out my story map for chapters 4 and 5. So I'll quickly go over the main characters, a couple of the other important characters, and the setting for chapters 4 and 5. So follow along with me on your story maps. But remember, we are looking for the conflict, so get ready for that momentarily. The main characters are Chief Joseph, Olocott, his brother, the Redcoats, which include Walid's red moccasin tops and swan necklace, and the other characters who appear are Sound of Running Feet, Springtime, her mother, and several Nez Perce leaders, including Looking Glass, Whitebird, Tuhuhu Sote. The setting is in Sound of Running Feet's village in Wallowa, and later in the chapters, it's when they're crossing the Snake River on the way to Lapway. So, what is the main conflict or the problem in this part of the story? Pause the video and think about this question.
Okay, so we've already done this part, so this is just a review.
Here's the conflict that I identified as Chapter 4 opens. General Howard has ordered the Nez Perce to move to a reservation, but some refuse to leave. Notice how much action this has set into motion. As you can see on the handout, we're going to think about the order of the events that happened in chapters 4 and 5. So I want you to think back through the main events in those chapters and ask yourself, what happens first? What happens next? Then, after that? So pause the video and summarize a few key events from those chapters in order. Say the events in your own words.
Okay, so again, we've already done this.
Feel free to refer back to chapters 4 to 5 of the text as needed.
So we've already done this, in our assessment. So again, this is just a review. So pay close attention to make sure that you had the correct responses on your assessment.
Summarize. Here's how I summarize the events. First, the Nez Perce gather to discuss General Howard's orders to leave Wallowa. Next, the chiefs decide to obey and the tribe prepares to leave Wallowa. Then, 5 Nez Perce bands gather and begin crossing the Snake River. After that, Springtime refuses to leave, vowing to have her baby on her people's homeland. So, what is the outcome of this part of the story? In other words, how does chapter 5 end? Pause the video and summarize the outcome of chapter 5 in your own words, and you can record it at the bottom of handout 19A.
Okay, so we actually have already gone ahead and done this on our assessment, and if you did it correctly, it was that they finally crossed Snake River after, obviously, Springtime has her baby.
Welcome back. Next, we're going to revisit an important scene in chapter 4 together. Do you remember the tribal council meeting? And we'll look at that in order to examine the conflict. At the end of chapter 3, we learn about a conflict among the Nez Perce tribe over whether they will obey General Howard's orders to leave Wallowa and move to the reservation at Lapway, or defy those orders. In other words, stay and fight for their homeland no matter what the cost. Let's explore this conflict more deeply by rereading an important scene that takes place at the beginning of chapter 4. And in this scene, Sound of Running Feet's band has gathered together to talk about General Howard's orders. But before we read, I wanted to give you a little bit of background. Sitting Bull is mentioned in this section, and he was a famous Lakota Sioux chief who united the Lakota tribes to resist the government's and the U.S. Army's efforts to remove them from their homeland. Sitting Bull helped lead a band of 3,000 Indians to defeat General George Armstrong Custer and his troops at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Walid Eats references this battle in the story. In 1877, the year that the novel opens, Sitting Bull had taken his band into Canada to escape the U.S. Army. All right, let's take a look at the very beginning of chapter 4. So read along with me as I start on page 18. Fire burned in front of the council lodge. Our people were gathered around it, talking together. As we rode up, a deep silence fell upon the clan. Most of them would obey Joseph, their chieftain. All but the young warriors would follow him faithfully, no matter where he led them. He stayed on his horse. "Listen to me with your hearts," he said to them, raising his voice against the wind. "You have heard the sad news. You know we must leave our home. Some among us, the young warriors, will say to you, 'Do not leave, do not flee like old women. Fight. We shall live here in peace.'" Everyone moved closer to him. "Now," he said, "many soldiers camp on our lake, as many as we have warriors, and they all carry guns. At Fort Lapway, hundreds of them wait. To the east and to the west, more soldiers are waiting, many more. To escape them would be dodging hail and hailstorm." The people pressed closer to my father. They were terribly quiet. They felt the truth of his words, like heavy stones falling upon them. From somewhere in the trees, Wali Eats called out, "Sitting Bull, the great Sioux chieftain, did not run. He fought Custer. He killed all of his soldiers." "But where is Sitting Bull now?" Chief Joseph asked. There was no answer from Wali Eats. "He's far away," said my father, "hiding in Canada, the old lady's country." "It would have been best if he had stood up and fought," said Two Moons. He stumped up and down, swinging his cudgel. "There would not be so many white soldiers." "But there are too many white soldiers. So many, we must go," my father said. Olocott, my uncle and the best of the warriors, nodded. "You speak the truth," he said. He picked up a cherry wood bow. "This bow looks strong," he said, "but it cannot stand against someone stronger." With a quick movement of his massive hands, he snapped the bow in two. My father held up his hand. "In 10 suns we will leave Wallowa. Make bundles of all you value. We will not return, not for a long time. What you leave behind, white scavengers will steal." So what's happening in this scene? Try to summarize that in one sentence. So what's happened is Chief Joseph is trying to convince the tribe that they should follow General Howard's orders because the soldiers far outnumber them. Some of the Redcoats, a group of Nez Perce warriors, including Wali Eats, disagree with him. Did you find yourself agreeing more with Chief Joseph or with the warriors? Let's take a closer look at the arguments that each side makes. Remember that the word argument can mean a conflict or a disagreement, and in this case, it means a statement for or against something.
Boys and girls, I just wanted you to know that you have this exact document on your Schoology folder for today. It's titled Day 14 GMT, I think T-chart assignment. So go ahead and open that up and have that in the background while we work through this next part.
Chief Joseph argues that the tribe should obey General Howard's orders and leave Wallowa. The group of Nez Perce warriors known as the Redcoats argue that the tribe should stay in Wallowa and prepare to fight General Howard and his soldiers. Chief Joseph and the Redcoats both offer reasons in favor of their argument. However, there are also risks associated with each argument. Pause the video and take a moment to think about some of the reasons in favor of each side's argument, as well as the possible risks associated with each. Here's an example of a reason in favor of Chief Joseph's argument to obey General Howard. Chief Joseph warns his people that the soldiers surround them and far outnumber their warriors, and all have guns. He argues that they could not possibly win against the soldiers, and therefore they must obey General Howard's orders and leave Wallowa. But there's also a risk associated with Chief Joseph's argument. I know that it's really hard for Chief Joseph to tell his people that they must obey General Howard's orders and leave Wallowa, especially after we heard the story of how he got his name, Thunder Rolling in the Mountains. One risk of leaving Wallowa now and moving his people to the Lapway Reservation is that they may never get to return to their homeland. Once the Nez Perce are gone, the U.S. government likely plans to open Wallowa up to settlers and miners looking for gold. Chief Joseph knows this risk, but to him, the risks of disobeying General Howard are far worse for his people. What other reasons can you think of in favor of Chief Joseph's argument to obey General Howard? What other possible risks are associated with this argument? What about reasons in favor of and risks associated with the Redcoats' argument to stay and fight? Now you're going to think about these questions on your own. Pause the video and copy this 4-column chart into your journal. Start the video once you've done so.
Okay, so you don't need to do that because we've already created this for you on your Schoology account. Again, it's that T-chart assignment.
You will actually complete several checks for understanding in this lesson. For this check for understanding, you're going to evaluate both sides of the argument. You'll write 1 to 2 reasons in favor and 1 to 2 risks for each side of the argument. Chief Joseph's argument is to obey orders and leave Wallowa. Redcoats' argument is to stay in Wallowa and fight the soldiers. Refer to pages 18 and 19 of the book as needed to support your ideas. Pause the video now, complete the task, and then start the video again when you've finished.
Once you've completed the task, you can also press submit on that assignment and then come back here like she said.
What other reasons in favor of each side's argument did you think of? What about the risks? You know, another reason for Chief Joseph's argument to obey and leave is keeping the peace, avoiding bloodshed, in other words, keeping his people safe. On the other hand, the risk is that the U.S. government and the settlers may continue to take advantage of the Nez Perce and other Native Americans, since threatening them with the removal from their homeland seemed to work to their advantage. A reason for the Redcoats' argument to stay and fight might be defending their dignity and their honor, fighting for what they believe in. And on the other hand, the risk is losing many Nez Perce people, warriors as well as the elderly, women, and children.
Okay, boys and girls, so that's it for today. Make sure that you've submitted your handout 19A and your day 14 T-chart assignment, and we will pick up with this tomorrow. Great job.